So when Janet and I bought a barn in the historic part of Shelburne, Nova Scotia, for her pottery studio, we had no idea at the time its connection to the Black Loyalist history here in town, and it's really quite fascinating. So you remember the story of the Black Loyalists are the former slaves in the American South, those who'd been enslaved in the South, who fought for the British or supported the British in the American Revolutionary War, and then at the end of the war, they were brought to Nova Scotia to be given their freedom, land, and opportunity. Of course, last week we found out that they didn't get it. They didn't get what was promised. But when they were here and getting it established, there were some people who were supportive in the process. And one of the people, so David George was a religious leader, started the Baptist church here in town, the Shelburne Baptist Church. He started the first church black church in the America, or at least one of the ones that's considered the first black churches in America. Came to Nova Scotia, started churches here, but things didn't go well. And the first race riot in North America started in his church when he was attempting to baptize a couple in his church who were white, and the people in the town did not like the idea, particularly the family members of those being baptized, did not like the idea of a black pastor baptizing white Christians. And so in this baptismal service in David George's church, he writes in his journal that it was crazy what happened. In fact, the sister of the woman he was trying to baptize was holding her hair, trying to keep her head from going under the water. Can you imagine that? Those of you who have any reference point for baptismal services and what would happen if in your setting someone jumped into the tank and tried to keep the person from being baptized. You can imagine how that created quite a stir. And in fact, it sparked the first race riot in North America here in Shelburne, Nova Scotia. There were other things, economic things that were bubbling under the surface prior to this, but this was kind of the catalyst that started it. And so there was a lot of stuff happening against David George and against the black community. But then there were some people who were supportive. David George also writes in his memoirs, in his journal, he writes about when he was and his family were starving and had no money and no food. There was a woman named Ann Taylor whose husband was William Taylor, and Ann was a white and her husband were white business owners and property owners in Shelburne who were supportive of David George, and they showed up at his door. Ann Taylor showed up at his door and gave him money, he says, for a basket of potatoes, which not only fed his family then, but fed, they were able to grow more potatoes and have even more food long term. And so it's a white family who were racial justice advocates, you might say, in today's language, who supported David George, gave him money for the food, and actually became big supporters in his church. Now, it was exciting. I tell you all that because it was exciting to Janet and I that when we bought this barn, we find out that the person who built the house on the property, and likely also built at least the first part of the barn, was William and Ann Taylor. The same people also owned our barn. Now, they owned other properties in Shelburne as well, and in fact, they had offered one of their other properties as a place for David George to start his church. Not the same property where we live, but still, the fact that William Taylor and Ann Taylor, one of their properties, people who were racial justice advocates, strong supporters of David George and the Black Loyalist community, it was just moving to us and exciting to us to be a part of that, to be connected to that. So when we were making our fourth and final video, which technically was the first one we recorded, but it's the fourth one in the series, for this 1783 of Black Loyalist History, these worship videos, music videos that we've been making for this Black History Month, we thought it would be a great idea to record the final one in our barn, a property owned by William and Ann Taylor, to tell the story of of racial justice advocates in the 1780s and encourage people to do the same today. So this is in my, I love this one's probably the most emotional of the videos we've made. The hymn is Amazing Grace, and Jesse Ryan, the Juno-nominated saxophonist, plays it beautifully. And I think you'll love this. It just creates deep emotion. And so let me show you. In fact, I think I'm going to show you the full video instead of the shortened one in this one, so you can see that. And then on the other side of this video, we'll tell you how you can get a copy of that and use it on your own. So here we go. Video number 4 in the 1783 series.
In 1783, when David George started his church in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, something unexpected happened. In addition to attracting Black Loyalist members, his dynamic leadership attracted some white members as well. Among them were William and Ann Taylor. William and Ann Taylor were more than casual attenders. William became a deacon in the church and was David George's main financial benefactor. When David George needed a place to worship, William Taylor offered his property. When David George and his family were in danger of starving, it was Ann Taylor who showed up at his door with money for a basket of potatoes. When David George finally had a building for his congregation, it was William Taylor who served as its caretaker. Today, we honor William and Ann Taylor, racial justice advocates, and we ask, who will step into their shoes and be the racial justice advocates much needed in the world today?
I absolutely love that video. I just love the way it feels, the even the lighting and the videography, and Jesse, the way he plays Amazing Grace is so moving and powerful. I remember one of the first people we showed that to, who were visiting the barn, some friends of ours, just broke down in tears, and I feel like that every time I see it. And so I hope you enjoyed that. In fact, I hope you enjoyed the whole series. And if you'd like to get a copy of this video, you can get it at my website, panorama.com. In the resource room, you can buy the full series of videos, all four, or just this one. And I would highly recommend, if you have not been able to do these other videos, I would highly recommend you use this one as the one and only one you would show this month, because of its message, because of the emotion, because of Amazing Grace, because of how beautiful it is. I would highly recommend it. And if nothing else, I highly recommend that you, in your church or in your personal life, find ways to acknowledge Black History Month, to learn Black history, to bring it into your worship experience, to bring it in your personal experience, as a way of supporting not only the Black Loyalist history, but the history of our Black community in general. So I hope you've enjoyed this series. Look forward to seeing you some more in the future, and other things that we will offer. There are other resources and workshops and other things available on panorama.com. We'd love to have you be a part of that as well. So we'll see you soon, and have a good day.